What would you do if you walked into a stadium packed with tens of thousands of people, and every single one of them was already on edge? Imagine the air thick with anticipation, the roar of fans echoing off every concrete wall, the scent of popcorn and spilled beer mixing into a chaotic cocktail of excitement and tension. And then, suddenly, you step into the spotlight, not as a fan, not as a celebrity guest, but as someone the crowd has been quietly whispering about, judging, debating, and in some corners, outright despising. That was Meghan Markle's entrance at Game 4 of the World Series, and from the very first second, the energy in Dodger Stadium shifted. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The moment she appeared, phones whipped out like weapons. Cameras zoomed in. The stadium that had been buzzing with the kind of electric anticipation reserved for a championship clash suddenly morphed into something else entirely. A powder keg waiting for a single spark. And that spark? Meghan herself. For weeks, whispers had circulated online. Social media was aflame with speculation, with posts ranging from fevered excitement to searing outrage. Fans debated endlessly. Would she attend? Would she make a statement? Some speculated she'd simply watch the game, perhaps exchange pleasantries with players. Others feared, and some even predicted, chaos. But no one truly understood the storm that was about to erupt. Picture this: the first cheers as the Dodgers hit the field. The crack of the bat sending the ball flying, the umpire's whistle slicing through the night air, the crowd's excitement swelling. And then, a ripple of tension, subtle at first, but growing by the second. Eyes darting toward the VIP box. A hush, a murmur, and there she was, Meghan Markle, poised, confident, a smile that seemed to say she was exactly where she wanted to be. But the audience didn't agree. Fans had brought their loyalty to the stadium like armor. Dodgers fans are not just casual spectators. They are diehards. Generations of devotion, season tickets clutched like family heirlooms, memories of historic wins and heartbreaks etched into their very identities. And to them, Meghan's presence was an intrusion. She was a royal, yes, but also a media storm incarnate. Someone who had mastered the art of public perception, who could twist a simple appearance into a headline frenzy. And now, she had entered their sacred space. From the first seconds, there was tension. A bottle tossed, then another. Murmurs became shouts. Security personnel tensed, ready to respond, their eyes scanning the crowd like hawks. The air shifted from excitement to hostility, and the stadium's energy became something raw and unpredictable. Every cheer of a home run was punctuated by a growl of displeasure directed at her. Fans were no longer just watching the game. They were watching her, calculating her every move, deciding what they thought of her in real time. But why such a fierce reaction? Some of it was loyalty to the Dodgers. Some of it was disdain for what Meghan represents. A life many see as glamorous, untouchable, and frustratingly out of reach. Some of it was a long-standing tension between celebrity culture and sports fandom. Add to that the complicated history she carries, the headlines, the interviews, the controversies, and you have a perfect storm. The crowd's anger wasn't just about a guest in the stadium. It was about everything she symbolizes to some: entitlement, attention, and intrusion into spaces they feel are sacred. And then came the moment no one anticipated. Meghan didn't simply sit quietly, letting the game unfold. No, she made her intentions clear. She wanted to speak. The stadium, a cathedral of baseball tradition, suddenly became her stage. Security exchanged nervous glances. Advisors whispered warnings. Fans groaned and laughed nervously. But she didn't hesitate. She had always been skilled at navigating public attention, at turning every eye to her, and she was doing it now in front of one of the most emotionally invested audiences in America. The first projectile hit the railing nearby. A soda can, then another, this time closer, ricocheting off the polished wood near the VIP section. The crowd's anger escalated like a wave crashing on rocks. Security tried to maintain order, ushering fans back, but the energy was unstoppable. Every cheer, every groan, every chant seemed to grow louder, more chaotic. The stadium had become a living organism, and Meghan was the catalyst. Social media exploded. Clips of the incidents spread within seconds. Memes were born. Comment sections became battlegrounds of opinion. People argued across states, across continents, dissecting every second of her entrance, every gesture, every glance. Some defended her right to speak. Others insisted she was in the wrong, a visitor who had crossed an invisible line. But the truth, as always, was far more complicated. It wasn't just about Meghan. It was about fandom, entitlement, history, and the inexplicable power of spectacle. And here's the part that shocks most people. What followed wasn't just chaos. It was strategy, a calculated move that no one in that stadium, no media outlet, no casual observer saw coming. Every object thrown, every gasp, every shouted insult. Meghan was aware of it all. Every step she took, every glance she gave, was part of a larger performance, a high-stakes game where the lines between celebrity, sports, and spectacle blurred into one. But before the world could fully process it, before any journalist could write the first coherent headline, the most unbelievable moment of the night happened. Security and fans alike froze, their attention captured by something neither anticipated. It was a moment that would dominate discussions for weeks to come. And it all started with a simple question. Why did Meghan Markle insist on making her speech in the first place, knowing the storm it would unleash? Some say it was arrogance. Some say it was courage. Some say it was desperation for control over a narrative that had long been written by others. But whatever the reason, the result was undeniable. Dodger Stadium had never witnessed anything like it. A place of tradition, of sport, of memory, had been transformed into a stage for drama, chaos, and spectacle. And the world, glued to screens both inside and outside the stadium, was left asking, what comes next? Because the truth is, the objects thrown and the cheers and boos were only the beginning. The real shock, the one that would ripple through the media, through social media, and through the very fabric of celebrity culture, was yet to come. What happened after that first moment would change the narrative entirely. It would challenge loyalties, test the limits of fandom, and force even the most ardent supporters to ask themselves what they really knew about Meghan Markle, and what they thought they could control in the presence of someone who commands attention like no one else. And as the crowd continued to react, as the tension built to a fever pitch, one thing was clear: no one was going home unchanged. Not the fans, not the players, not the media, and certainly not Meghan herself. The question that hung in the air was simple, yet terrifying. What was she going to do next? The first chapter of this story was written in seconds. The second chapter, the one that would reveal not just anger but strategy, not just spectacle but intent, was waiting to unfold. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The stadium held its collective breath as Meghan Markle appeared. Did anyone really expect calm? After all, this wasn't a standard game day guest appearance. This was Meghan, a figure who had dominated headlines, commanded attention, and ignited public debate for years. Some loved her, some despised her, and most watched her with an almost compulsive curiosity. And now, she was here, at Game 4 of the World Series, stepping onto a stage where loyalty ran deep and tempers ran even deeper. From the moment she was spotted, the energy in Dodger Stadium shifted. You could feel it, like static in the air before a storm. People turned, squinting through cameras and smartphones. Security tensed, whispering to each other, their eyes flicking nervously between the VIP box and the crowd. Meghan's entourage moved with precision, a small army of aides, assistants, and handlers surrounding her like a shield. But no shield could stop the immediate judgment of the fans. Fans didn't just watch. They evaluated, calculated, decided. Was she smiling too much? Too little? Too poised? Too casual? And then came the first mutterings, soft at first, almost imperceptible. She shouldn't be here. This is ours. Who does she think she is? The murmurs grew louder, spreading like wildfire through the stands. Eyes narrowed, voices rose, and the first signs of real hostility began to appear. It wasn't just her presence, it was what she represented. Meghan's every public move had been scrutinized, dissected, turned into headlines. She was more than a guest. She was a lightning rod. And Dodgers fans, with decades of loyalty and a fierce sense of ownership over their stadium and team, were instantly defensive. They didn't just want a game. They wanted their space respected. And Meghan's arrival felt like a challenge, a provocation, even if unintentionally. The first cheers of the game clashed with the murmurs about her presence. Some fans tried to drown out the controversy with support for their team, clapping and chanting to maintain focus. But others couldn't look away. Phones lifted like tiny torches, recording every step, every glance, every movement. And then it happened. The first bottle flew, not aimed at her directly, but close enough to make security and nearby fans flinch. Security rushed in, moving like a well-drilled team, but the crowd's energy was uncontainable. Every cheer of a home run, every groan at a missed catch, was punctuated by tension and suspicion. Some fans shouted, some laughed nervously, and some simply stared, wide-eyed, at the woman who had caused such disruption. Meghan didn't flinch. She moved with the grace and poise that had defined her public persona, aware of every gaze, every whisper, every emotion directed at her. It's tempting to think someone like Meghan would be intimidated, or cautious, or even retreat. But that wasn't her style. She had mastered the art of controlling attention, of turning potential chaos into opportunity. And now, she was doing it live, in front of tens of thousands of people. Every step she took, every slight smile, every tilt of her head seemed calculated, precise, purposeful. It was a performance, but one grounded in real risk, in real-time reactions, in a crowd that was ready to explode at the slightest provocation. Meanwhile, the fans continued to react, often contradictorily. Some were furious, hurling small objects in protest, their anger raw and visceral. Others were mesmerized, watching intently, caught between resentment and fascination. Some cheered quietly for her courage. Some laughed at the absurdity of the situation. And through it all, Meghan's presence dominated the room in a way that no single moment of the game could match. There was also a subtle irony in the air. Here was a woman criticized endlessly for seeking attention, yet when she finally stepped into a public arena, some of the crowd wanted to obliterate her presence. They shouted, they threw, they murmured. And yet, without her even speaking a word, she had taken control of the narrative in that stadium. She wasn't just an observer. She was the focal point, the catalyst, the reason the night felt electrified with tension. And what about the other guests, the players, the commentators, the staff? Many tried to focus on the game, but their attention inevitably drifted. Players glanced toward the VIP section, some raising eyebrows. Commentators whispered nervously. Cameras shifted to capture both the action on the field and the growing spectacle off it. Staff members moved with care, balancing hospitality with safety, trying to anticipate the next movement of a crowd that was unpredictable and volatile. The first direct confrontation came quicker than anyone expected. A plastic cup flew toward Meghan's section, landing harmlessly but audibly near her feet. Gasps, laughter, and shouts erupted simultaneously. Security immediately reacted, moving between the crowd and her. The fans who had launched the projectile were either laughed off or hushed by those around them, creating pockets of chaos in an otherwise orderly stadium. But the message was clear. This crowd was testing her boundaries, pushing her, measuring her resolve. And Meghan responded, not with fear, not with retreat, but with awareness. She adjusted her posture slightly, lifted her chin, and allowed her gaze to sweep across the stands. Every look, every expression seemed intentional. Some saw confidence, some saw defiance, and some simply saw a woman navigating a storm like few others could. The optics were undeniable. Meghan was in control, even as the environment around her teetered on chaos. But then came a quiet moment that changed the trajectory entirely. A hush fell over the crowd, as if everyone realized that this wasn't just about her presence anymore. Something was about to happen. She wasn't going to sit quietly. She wasn't going to simply observe. She wanted more. And in a stadium accustomed to centuries of tradition and ritual, that desire, her desire, to speak, to address the audience, to step fully into the spotlight, was explosive. Fans murmured nervously, some laughing, some groaning, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Security tensed further, realizing that they weren't just managing a presence. They were managing the potential eruption of a full-scale spectacle. Cameras zoomed, reporters whispered into earpieces, and the energy in the stadium became almost unbearable. Every fan, every player, every official sensed the coming moment, yet no one could predict what would happen next. And here's where it gets truly fascinating. What Meghan was about to do wasn't just risky, it was unprecedented. No celebrity guest, no royal figure, had attempted to command attention in this particular arena in quite this way. Every stadium rule, every unspoken social contract, every tradition of sportsmanship and decorum was suddenly at odds with her intent. And yet, she didn't hesitate. She had made a decision, and in her mind, the chaos unfolding around her was a part of the plan. The crowd waited, tense and uncertain. Some fans were ready to cheer. Some were ready to jeer. Some were ready to throw. And in that split second, Meghan's gaze swept across the stadium, taking in the energy, measuring the opposition, acknowledging the support. And then, she prepared to speak. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The tension in Dodger Stadium was palpable, like a tightly coiled spring ready to snap. The moment Meghan Markle prepared to speak, something shifted. You could feel it, a pulse of anger, excitement, and disbelief vibrating through the crowd. Some fans had come to cheer for their team, some to soak in the World Series spectacle, but almost instantly, they were all united by one thing: Meghan's presence. And not in the way she might have hoped. It began with a bottle. A single plastic water bottle, hurled from the upper deck. It wasn't aimed with lethal intent, but the noise it made as it hit the metal railing below was deafening. Heads turned. Gasps rippled across the crowd. Security reacted immediately, rushing toward the source, but it was already too late. The message had been sent. This stadium wasn't going to accept her intrusion quietly. And then the floodgates opened. Cups, wrappers, a stray popcorn bucket. All of them launched toward the VIP box where she was seated. The chaos was both immediate and strangely cinematic, like something out of a movie that no one could have scripted. Cameras captured the moment in slow motion. The surprise in Meghan's eyes, the split-second reaction of security, the roar of fans caught between fury and fascination. What's striking here is the contradiction of human behavior. Some fans were incensed, convinced she had overstepped, that she didn't belong here. Others were captivated, almost unable to look away as the drama unfolded. Some shouted insults. Others laughed nervously at the absurdity of throwing objects at someone seated so high above the field. And yet, all of these reactions fueled the next wave. Every action created a reaction. The crowd was an unpredictable organism, each member influencing the whole, and Meghan was at its center. Security was stretched to its limit. They moved swiftly, but the stadium was massive, and the crowd was relentless. People leaned over railings, grabbing whatever they could reach: programs, drinks, even hats, and flung them in protest. The goal wasn't harm. It was symbolic, a demonstration of anger, loyalty, and frustration all at once. And while it may sound chaotic, there was an order to the madness. Each act was a statement, a declaration that the stadium, this sacred temple of baseball, belonged to the fans, and she was, in their eyes, trespassing. Meghan, surprisingly, remained composed. Every tilt of her head, every lift of her hand, suggested awareness. She wasn't just reacting. She was absorbing the chaos, letting it inform her next move. And that's when it got truly interesting. Fans weren't just reacting to her presence. They were reacting to her reaction. Her calm in the face of their anger seemed almost audacious, provocative even, and it only fueled the next round of hostility. By the third inning, the situation had escalated. Security had begun to implement stricter measures, trying to form a buffer between her and the most aggressive fans. But the crowd was relentless. Someone threw a half-eaten hot dog. Another person hurled a foam cup filled with soda, creating a small splash as it landed near her feet. Each act of defiance was met with tension, gasps, and even laughter from bystanders. The energy in the stadium was electrifying, thrilling, frightening, and impossible to ignore. What's fascinating here is the psychology of crowd behavior. When thousands of people are gathered with a shared target for frustration, emotions amplify exponentially. One person hurls an object, and suddenly dozens feel emboldened to act. This is what psychologists call emotional contagion: anger, excitement, and fear spreading through a group like wildfire. Meghan was at the epicenter, a singular focus for a collective emotional storm. And yet, there was also admiration buried in the chaos. Some fans whispered among themselves, marveling at her poise. She's not scared, they said. She's handling this better than anyone would. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Here was a crowd attacking her, yet simultaneously measuring her courage, her ability to remain composed under pressure. In a strange, contradictory way, this chaos amplified her presence, ensuring that every camera in the stadium and every phone focused entirely on her. The commentators on the broadcast were scrambling for words. "This is unlike anything we've seen," one of them said. "Fans are throwing objects, security is on high alert, and yet Meghan Markle remains calm and composed. How will this play out?" Social media erupted simultaneously. Clips of flying bottles, cups, and even a rogue foam finger circulated within seconds. Memes were born in real time. Hashtags like #DodgerDrama and #MeghanMoment trended within minutes. The stadium chaos was spilling into a global conversation, creating a feedback loop that amplified both her visibility and the fans' outrage. And then, something truly unexpected happened. Amidst the flying debris and shouting fans, Meghan stood, or at least leaned slightly forward, and raised her hand. It was a small gesture, almost imperceptible, but in that moment, it changed the dynamics entirely. She wasn't pleading. She wasn't retreating. She was asserting presence, signaling that she was aware of every reaction, every whisper, every thrown object. It was audacious. It was daring. And it was provocative. The crowd's reaction was immediate. Some cheered, a nervous, hesitant applause. Some groaned, their frustration boiling over. Others, more daring, threw another object, almost as if to test her resolve. And the cycle continued. Action, reaction, observation, amplification. This wasn't just a spectator sport anymore. This was a psychological battlefield. Every cheer, every hiss, every thrown cup was a negotiation of power, and Meghan was in control of the conversation without saying a single word. But the most interesting moment came when a particularly bold fan, mid-bleachers, arms raised in defiance, flung a souvenir baseball toward the VIP section. Security lunged, but Meghan instinctively leaned slightly back, avoiding it with grace. The camera caught the motion perfectly, slow-motion footage circulating instantly online. The narrative was forming. Meghan Markle, royal, celebrity, subject of endless scrutiny, had walked into a storm and was navigating it with precision. She was turning chaos into a stage, tension into spectacle. Yet, while many admired her composure, not everyone was impressed. Some fans shouted insults, some jeered, some waved banners proclaiming that she didn't belong. The stadium became a microcosm of public opinion, divided, contradictory, and unpredictable. And in that division lay the true drama. Meghan wasn't just present. She had become a mirror, reflecting the crowd's emotions back at them, forcing them to confront their own contradictions, biases, and loyalties. Then came the pivotal moment. Meghan, aware that she could not remain passive, leaned forward slightly and addressed the crowd, not with words, not yet, but with a gesture that signaled intent. It was a precursor, a warning, a spark. The stadium's reaction was immediate, a mixture of disbelief and fascination. Social media lit up again, commentators scrambled for analysis, and fans braced for what would come next. And that's when it happened, the first truly dangerous moment. A bottle, larger than the others, flew past security and struck the railing near her section. The noise echoed like a gunshot. Security surged forward, fans screamed, and for a split second, time seemed to freeze. All eyes were on her. Would she duck? Would she panic? Would the chaos overwhelm her? She did none of those things. Instead, she remained poised, scanning the crowd with that signature calm. And in that instant, a narrative crystallized. Meghan Markle wasn't just present at the World Series. She had arrived. She had disrupted. She had asserted control over a stadium filled with thousands, transforming what should have been a game day into an unforgettable spectacle. But the chaos was far from over. What had started with small objects had escalated, and the crowd's energy was now unpredictable, amplified by both anger and curiosity. Security was on high alert, commentators were shouting over one another, and social media was exploding. Every second brought new tension, new reactions, new surprises. And just when you thought it couldn't get more intense, Meghan made the move that no one expected. one that would push the night into uncharted territory. The first wave of projectiles had set the stage, but the next moment, the one that would change everything, was already approaching. And what came next would shock even the most seasoned observers and leave the entire stadium holding its breath. What would you do if you were in the middle of a roaring stadium, tens of thousands of fans watching, every eye trained on you, and chaos was erupting all around? Would you shrink into the background? Would you wait for the storm to pass? Or would you step forward and demand the spotlight anyway? Meghan Markle chose the latter, and the decision ignited one of the most unexpected controversies in recent World Series history. It started quietly. After dodging the first wave of projectiles, Meghan remained in her VIP box, seemingly assessing the crowd, measuring the energy, watching the chaos unfold. Some onlookers believed she might retreat, that the fury and hostility of the fans would intimidate even someone of her experience. But she didn't. She leaned slightly forward, signaling intent, scanning the stadium with a confidence that was equal parts audacity and calculation. And then, the announcement came. She wanted to speak. At first, it sounded almost surreal. Fans were already on edge, some throwing cups and bottles, others shouting insults. And here was Meghan Markle, royal, celebrity, headline magnate, demanding the microphone. The stadium fell into a strange silence, like a suspended breath, as if everyone collectively realized the magnitude of what was about to happen. A VIP guest asking to speak during Game 4 of the World Series? It was unprecedented. Security personnel exchanged anxious glances. Advisors whispered into earpieces, likely debating whether to allow this or intervene. Players on the field noticed the shift in energy. Even commentators, who were accustomed to reporting live chaos, were momentarily at a loss. "This isn't just a guest appearance anymore," one said, voice tight with disbelief. "This is something else entirely." And then Meghan spoke, not through the microphone yet, but through gestures. A raised hand, a tilt of her head, a subtle lean forward. She was communicating intent, asserting presence. The crowd noticed, instantly dividing into factions. Some cheered quietly, impressed by her courage, her composure, her audacity. Others groaned, muttered, and even launched another object or two, as if testing her resolve, as if daring her to proceed. So why was this so controversial? On paper, it seems simple. Someone asks to speak at a game. But context matters. Sports events, especially the World Series, follow tradition and ritual. The crowd expects the game to be the center of attention. VIP appearances are welcomed, but usually they are ceremonial, brief, and unobtrusive. Meghan's demand was different. It wasn't about tradition. It wasn't about ceremony. It was about assertion, her desire to speak, to be heard, to influence the narrative. And that subtle act of defiance was enough to inflame an already volatile crowd. The psychological stakes were enormous. Fans had invested decades of loyalty into this team, this stadium, this experience. Their devotion created an almost tribal mentality, an expectation that their space, their rituals, their attention, and their collective experience should be respected. Meghan's insistence on speaking, her claim to the microphone, violated an unspoken contract between the fans and their sacred stadium. She wasn't just intruding physically, she was intruding emotionally. And yet, her demand also had an air of inevitability. Meghan Markle has always known how to navigate public attention. She understands optics, timing, and audience psychology. She had observed the crowd, felt their energy, measured their reactions. Her insistence to speak wasn't reckless. It was deliberate. She knew the risk, knew the pushback she would receive, and chose to proceed anyway. That's where the drama intensifies. She wasn't just a passive participant. She was an active player, altering the dynamics of an already tense environment. Fans reacted in real time. Some shouted, "No way." Others laughed nervously, unsure whether to be entertained or outraged. Some threw objects again. Others simply watched, frozen by the audacity of it all. The energy in the stadium became electric, unpredictable, almost tangible. The line between entertainment and confrontation blurred. It was no longer a simple baseball game. It was a psychological experiment played out in public. Meanwhile, the media went into overdrive. Camera operators zoomed in on her section, commentators speculated, Reporters scrambled for sound bites. Social media erupted, clips circulating within seconds. Hashtags surged. Hashtag Meghan speech. Hashtag Dodger drama. Hashtag royal controversy. Within minutes, millions were watching, reacting, debating. The ripple effect was instantaneous, global, and relentless. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had a reaction. And Meghan's move had sparked it all. What's remarkable here is the contradiction embedded in the crowd's response. On one hand, fans felt a sense of ownership, a belief that Meghan had no right to speak. On the other hand, some were captivated, unable to look away as the drama unfolded. The hostility and fascination existed simultaneously, creating a volatile environment where anything could happen. And for Meghan, that environment became her stage. She was fully aware that stepping forward could backfire spectacularly. One wrong gesture, one perceived misstep, and the crowd's fury could escalate beyond control. Yet, she pressed forward, leaning subtly toward the microphone, signaling readiness to speak. Every movement was deliberate, calculated, and perfectly timed. She was performing in real time, balancing risk and reward, daring the crowd to react while maintaining composure. Security was tense, caught between protocol and unpredictability. Could they allow her to speak? Should they intervene? The stadium's hierarchy had never faced such a scenario. VIP guest, global celebrity, royal figure, demanding access to the microphone during a championship game? The answer was unclear. Every decision mattered. Every second was amplified. Every reaction counted. The fans, sensing the tension, escalated their actions. Projectiles flew again, more bottles, cups, even a stray hot dog that somehow left someone's hands mid-cheer. The noise was deafening. Security moved swiftly to intercept, but the crowd's energy was unstoppable. Meghan, however, remained calm, leaning slightly forward, her gaze sweeping the stadium. There was awareness in her eyes, a recognition of both hostility and fascination. She wasn't just present, she was participating in the drama, shaping it, controlling it, influencing it. And then came the first words, not spoken yet, but through body language and eye contact. She acknowledged the crowd. She measured their reactions. She seemed to say, without words, I see you. I understand you. And I will proceed. That silent communication intensified the crowd's energy, creating a feedback loop that was both thrilling and dangerous. Fans shouted, gestured, threw objects, cheered, booed, all while Meghan's poised presence held the narrative in place. But the most controversial moment was still to come. Security tried to intercede. Advisors whispered warnings. Players glanced nervously, and commentators struggled to describe the scene accurately. And yet, Meghan's insistence only grew stronger. She wanted the microphone. She wanted her voice to be heard. She wanted, in that moment, to command attention in a space that had never allowed such disruption. And here's where the real tension hits. By demanding to speak, she wasn't just asserting herself. She was challenging the unspoken hierarchy of Dodger Stadium. She was challenging tradition, fan loyalty, the very expectation of how a World Series game should unfold. And in doing so, she forced everyone in the stadium to confront an uncomfortable truth. One person, poised and aware, could bend the rules of public perception, even in a space designed for order and ritual. The crowd's reaction was immediate. Some shouted in disbelief. Some laughed nervously. Some threw objects again, testing her composure, daring her to falter. And as the tension mounted, it became clear that the night would not be defined by home runs or strikeouts. It would be defined by Meghan Markle and her audacious demand to speak. And just when it seemed like the situation couldn't escalate any further, Meghan made a subtle yet decisive move, one that would push the controversy into uncharted territory. The stadium held its collective breath. The world watched on screens both large and small, and every fan, every player, every security officer wondered the same thing. What would she say next? And how would the crowd respond? The stage was set. The microphone was within reach. And what came next would shock the entire stadium and leave audiences worldwide on the edge of their seats. As Meghan Markle prepared to speak, the energy in Dodger Stadium was already at a fever pitch, but outside the stadium, a different storm was brewing. Every camera, every microphone, Every live feed and smartphone streaming the chaos became a conduit for a media frenzy the likes of which the World Series had never seen. Within seconds, the spectacle had transcended the game itself, turning into a global event fueled by drama, tension, and disbelief. The first network cut to live footage, broadcasting Meghan's poised presence in the VIP box. Commentators scrambled to describe what was happening. Her gestures, the tension in the crowd, the flurry of projectiles thrown from the stands. "We've never witnessed anything like this during a World Series game," one announcer said, voice tight with incredulity. "Fans are throwing objects, security is on high alert, and Meghan Markle is about to speak." Social media immediately exploded with clips of the chaos. Within minutes, thousands of viewers had already shared short videos, GIFs, and memes across platforms, fueling a frenzy that would dominate headlines for the next 24 hours. But the real drama wasn't just on the screen, it was in the interpretation of the events. Pundits debated endlessly. Was Meghan being provocative? Was she courageous? Was this a PR stunt or a genuine attempt to engage with the crowd? Each perspective amplified the controversy. Every television analyst, every online commentator, every fan with a smartphone suddenly became part of the narrative, shaping public perception in real time. Newsrooms went into overdrive. Editors scrambled to write headlines, fact-check clips, and contextualize what they were witnessing. Royal drama hits Dodgers Stadium ran on one channel. Meghan Markle faces angry fans at World Series appeared on another. Tweets from celebrities, journalists, and influencers poured in, each adding fuel to the fire. Within hours, the story had taken on a life of its own, far beyond the stadium walls. The social media reaction was immediate and explosive. Fans and critics debated every second of Meghan's presence. Some called her brave, praising her poise and control amid the chaos. Others condemned her, claiming she had disrespected fans and tradition. Memes went viral within minutes. Images of Meghan ducking projectiles, captions about her audacity, sarcastic commentary on the absurdity of the situation. In a strange twist, the crowd's hostility and her composure became intertwined, creating a spectacle that blurred the lines between outrage and fascination. Meanwhile, the stadium itself became a focal point for live coverage. Camera operators zoomed in, panned across sections, and followed the trajectory of thrown objects, capturing every second of tension. Analysts paused to discuss crowd behavior, while social media feeds highlighted both supportive and hostile reactions from fans. It was a chaotic feedback loop. The media amplified the crowd responded to the coverage, and Meghan's every gesture was dissected, discussed, and shared in real time. One particularly interesting element was the contrast between domestic and international coverage. American outlets focused on the clash between celebrity and sports culture, emphasizing fan loyalty and stadium etiquette. British outlets, however, framed the story through the lens of Meghan's public image and the ongoing royal saga. This dual narrative created an even more complex web of interpretation. Depending on where you were, Meghan was either a disruptor, a heroine, or the embodiment of entitlement. The frenzy wasn't limited to traditional media. Live streams, podcasts, TikTok clips, Instagram stories, all exploded simultaneously, offering multiple perspectives. Some fans uploaded shaky, first-person videos of the chaos, capturing objects flying, security scrambling, and Meghan's calm composure. Others created humorous remixes, turning the tension into viral comedy. Every upload added layers to the narrative, expanding the story far beyond the confines of the stadium. Meanwhile, journalists tried to provide context. Analysts discussed previous instances of celebrity appearances at sports events, highlighting that while VIP guests were common, no one had ever attempted to command attention under such conditions. Comparisons were drawn to past controversies, but Meghan's situation was unique. A royal, a global celebrity, navigating a volatile crowd during one of the most significant sports events in the United States. It was unprecedented, and the coverage reflected that uncertainty. Even live commentators struggled to maintain control of the broadcast. Their attempts to describe the baseball action were frequently interrupted by the unfolding spectacle in the VIP section. One commentator exclaimed, "We should be watching the pitch, but instead, we're we're watching Meghan Markle face down a stadium full of angry fans. The surrealness of the moment wasn't lost on anyone. The game had become secondary to the drama, and every eye, inside and outside the stadium, was glued to the unfolding controversy. Online, the reactions became polarized. Some threads erupted in defense of Meghan. She's handling this better than anyone could. Incredible poise. Others were scathing. She had no right to speak. This is our stadium, our game, and she overstepped. The arguments were fast, furious, and often contradictory. Memes and screenshots circulated endlessly, creating a virtual echo chamber where the story fed itself. Every object thrown, every shout from the crowd, every subtle gesture by Meghan became a point of discussion, a symbol of larger cultural tensions. But the most fascinating element was the unpredictability. No one could anticipate how the next minute would unfold. Would Meghan finally get to speak? Would the crowd erupt further? Would security intervene more aggressively? The story was unfolding in real time, and the media frenzy ensured that every moment would be scrutinized, shared, and amplified. The narrative was no longer just about a celebrity at a sports event. It was about spectacle, power, public perception, and control. And yet, despite the chaos and the media amplification, Meghan remained remarkably composed. Her gaze swept the stadium, her posture unwavering, her presence commanding. Cameras captured every motion, the subtle nod, the slight lean, the poised adjustment of her clothing. Each gesture was magnified by the coverage, interpreted as courage, arrogance, or calculated strategy, depending on the viewer's perspective. She had transformed from a passive observer to an active participant in a story that was now global in scale. Security and staff were hyper-aware of the optics. Any misstep could become a viral moment, a headline, a meme. They moved cautiously, guiding her subtly while managing the increasingly volatile crowd. Advisors whispered warnings, reminding her of the potential fallout. And yet, Meghan's presence and her insistence to speak continued to dominate the narrative. She was no longer just a celebrity in the stadium. She was the story. The commentary, both live and online, began to speculate about her motivations. Some argued it was a strategic move designed to reclaim public attention and shape the narrative. Others suggested it was impulsive, driven by ego or a desire for control. Analysts discussed crowd psychology, celebrity culture, and media amplification, exploring how one individual could create a spectacle that reverberated far beyond the stadium walls. Every interpretation added tension, feeding the drama and leaving viewers, fans, and commentators alike guessing what would happen next. And then, as the cameras panned across the stands and security tightened around the VIP section, something subtle but significant occurred. Meghan's hand reached for the microphone, signaling her intent to speak. The stadium's energy surged in response. Cheers, boos, gasps, and shouts collided in a chaotic symphony, captured live on screens worldwide. The media frenzy reached its peak. Journalists shouted over one another, social media exploded with real-time reactions, and the stadium itself seemed to vibrate with anticipation. It was at that moment that the story reached a turning point. The media frenzy, which had amplified every nuance, every gesture, every reaction, was no longer simply reporting events, it was shaping them. Public perception, fan behavior, and Meghan's own strategy were entwined in a feedback loop of tension, spectacle, and anticipation. And the next move, whether she spoke, paused, or acted differently, would determine not just the immediate reaction but the legacy of the night itself. The world was watching. The stadium was holding its breath. And Meghan Markle, poised and aware, was about to make her next move. What came next would shock everyone and leave a mark on both sports history and celebrity culture that no one could ignore. When Meghan Markle demanded the microphone, it wasn't just a clash of celebrity and tradition. It was a clash of identity, loyalty, and deeply ingrained fan culture. Dodgers fans are not casual observers. They are a fiercely loyal, almost tribal community, bound together by decades of history, heartbreak, and triumph. Their devotion runs through generations. For many, attending a World Series game isn't just entertainment. It's a sacred ritual, a touchstone of memory, family, and pride. And Meghan's presence? It was perceived as an intrusion into their sanctuary. The backlash began almost immediately. A few fans in the front rows shouted insults, attempting to vocalize the anger that had been simmering since her arrival. "She doesn't belong here. This is our game. Go home." The shouts spread, amplified by the crowd like a wildfire. The stadium, already tense from the chaos of flying projectiles, vibrated with heightened emotion. Every cheer for a Dodgers home run was countered with boos directed at Meghan. Every pop of the bat, every call from the umpire, became secondary to the unfolding drama in the VIP section. It wasn't just anger, it was personal. Fans felt that Meghan's insistence to speak violated an unspoken code of respect. She wasn't merely attending. She was asserting herself in a space that had been cultivated by generations of loyal supporters. For many, her presence felt like a challenge, a subtle provocation, and the backlash was immediate. People leaned over railings, waving banners, and gesturing in protest. Small objects, programs, cups, even gloves, were hurled toward the VIP box, not with intent to harm, but as a symbolic act of defiance. Yet the backlash was more complex than simple hostility. There was fascination, too. Fans couldn't look away. Some whispered, "She's brave," even as others shouted in anger. Some were enraged but mesmerized. There was an odd duality. Meghan was the target of fury and simultaneously the center of attention. Every movement she made, every gesture, every slight shift in posture was being scrutinized. The crowd's anger became a feedback loop. Her poise inflamed them further, which in turn demanded greater composure from her. Social media amplified this division. Clips of fans hurling objects circulated instantly. Comment sections exploded with analysis and speculation. Some praised the crowd for defending their sacred space. Others criticized them for targeting a guest in an unsafe manner. The discussion spilled over into news articles, podcasts, and late-night commentary. Within hours, Meghan's presence at a single World Series game had become a global cultural event, raising questions about celebrity, entitlement, fandom, and the power of public perception. Among the crowd, frustration and confusion mingled. Some fans tried to focus on the game, clapping for Dodgers plays or groaning at mistakes, but their attention was constantly pulled back to the VIP box. Others had brought props, signs, and banners aimed at her, attempting to assert dominance in a shared space. Security worked tirelessly, moving through the stadium to prevent injuries and maintain order, but the energy of thousands of people fueled a volatile situation that defied containment. Psychologists would later describe what unfolded as group emotional contagion, the rapid spread of anger and excitement through a large crowd. One person throws an object, another shouts, someone else records it on their phone, and suddenly the collective emotion escalates exponentially. Meghan, standing at the epicenter, became a magnet for the stadium's energy, whether it was admiration, rage, or curiosity. Every fan's reaction influenced the next, creating an unpredictable, almost cinematic environment. For longtime Dodgers supporters, the backlash was also rooted in a sense of ownership. They felt protective of the stadium, the team, and the shared experience. This was a space where memories were made. Fathers and sons celebrating wins, families cheering together for decades, fans grieving losses collectively. Meghan's demand to speak, coupled with the tension her presence generated, felt like a violation of that shared sanctuary. It wasn't simply personal animosity. It was a defense of culture, history, and tradition. And yet, the backlash wasn't uniform. Some fans, even in the midst of anger, expressed awe at her composure. "Look at her," whispered one fan to another. "She's not scared at all." The duality created a fascinating contradiction. Meghan was simultaneously vilified and admired, challenged and respected, attacked and acknowledged. The crowd's response was an intricate dance of emotion, cultural expectation, and spectacle. Security and staff were hyper-aware of the implications. Every fan confrontation, every object thrown, and every loud reaction carried potential consequences. They had to balance safety with optics. Any overreaction could become a viral moment, adding fuel to the media frenzy. Meanwhile, Meghan maintained her poise, scanning the stadium with awareness, understanding the stakes, and communicating confidence without a single word. Her composure further inflamed some fans, who saw it as arrogance, while impressing others who saw it as courage. Even players on the field were caught in the tension. Some glanced toward the VIP section, curious or concerned. Others focused on the game, but couldn't ignore the energy shift. Every home run, strike, and defensive play was now layered atop an ongoing drama in the stands, transforming the World Series into a multi-dimensional spectacle that blended sports, celebrity, and psychological warfare. The social media layer added another dimension. Fans recorded, streamed, tweeted, and posted images, creating a real-time global audience. Hashtags like hashtag Dodger Drama, hashtag Meghan Moment, and hashtag Royal Controversy trended worldwide. Analysts dissected every gesture, every look, every thrown object. Memes spread like wildfire, capturing both humor and outrage. In essence, Meghan's presence had turned a sports event into a global conversation, forcing fans, media, and observers to wrestle with their reactions, biases, and loyalties. Yet, amidst the chaos, one key point emerged. The backlash wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. Meghan's awareness of the crowd, her poise, and her subtle gestures ensured that the spectacle remained focused on her. The fans, in their outrage, were inadvertently amplifying her presence. Each shout, each thrown item, each camera capture served to elevate her visibility and control of the narrative. She had become both subject and director, orchestrating drama without uttering a single word. The tension escalated as the night wore on. Every time Meghan leaned forward, smiled, or acknowledged the crowd, a ripple of reaction spread through the stadium. Cheers, boos, laughter, and frustration collided, creating a chaotic symphony. Security and staff moved in anticipation, trying to maintain order without dampening the spectacle. And the fans, fueled by loyalty and outrage, continued to push boundaries, testing her composure and resolve at every turn. The backlash had reached a critical point. Objects were flying more frequently. Shouts and chants grew louder. Social media amplified each incident within seconds. Analysts speculated endlessly about her motives. Fans were divided, yet united in their fixation. And Meghan, calm, deliberate, and aware, remained at the center of it all, an island of composure amid a storm of human emotion. But just when the chaos seemed to have peaked, the night was about to take an even more shocking turn. What the fans didn't know, and what the media couldn't yet capture, was that Meghan's next move would escalate the confrontation beyond anything they had anticipated. The backlash, intense as it was, would become the precursor to a spectacle that no one would forget. The stadium was on edge. Social media was ablaze. Fans were yelling, throwing, and recording. And Meghan Markle, poised and unflinching, was preparing to take the next step, one that would redefine the narrative and leave everyone asking, who really controlled the story? By the time the sixth inning rolled around, Dodger Stadium had transformed from a sports arena into a pressure cooker of tension, emotion, and spectacle. Security personnel, usually accustomed to standard VIP protocols, were now managing a full-blown crisis. The fans were energized, unpredictable, and increasingly aggressive, and at the epicenter of the storm was Meghan Markle, poised and composed despite the chaos around her. It started with subtle adjustments. Security teams had initially formed a perimeter around her VIP box, thinking that the first wave of flying cups, bottles, and food items had been an isolated incident. But as projectiles continued to rain down, they realized that containment would require more than routine measures. Guards moved strategically, positioning themselves between the crowd and the box, their eyes scanning for threats with the intensity of soldiers on a battlefield. The challenge wasn't just the objects. It was the unpredictability of human behavior. Each fan's reaction depended on countless variables: the person next to them, their perception of Meghan, the camera pointed at them, and even the real-time social media feedback streaming across phones in their hands. Security wasn't just dealing with physical threats, they were managing psychological volatility. Every shouted insult, every thrown bottle, every recorded gesture added layers of complexity to the situation. Communication became critical. Radios buzzed constantly as team leaders coordinated movements, updated protocols, and relayed intelligence about potentially hostile areas in the stands. Some guards were stationed at access points to the VIP section, ready to intervene if a fan breached the barricade. Others patrolled the aisles, keeping a watchful eye on fans leaning too far over railings or brandishing objects. It was a delicate balance. Act too aggressively and risk inflaming the crowd. Act too passively and Meghan's safety and the spectacle's integrity could be compromised. The crowd, sensing the heightened security, adapted in real time. Objects became smaller, more frequent, harder to track. A half-empty soda cup might fly first, followed by a crumpled program, then a foam glove or cap. It was almost choreographed chaos. Each act of defiance emboldened others, creating a cascade of energy that swept through the stadium. Security had to anticipate not only the objects but the intent behind them, a nearly impossible task in a stadium filled with tens of thousands of unpredictable individuals. Inside the VIP box, Meghan's awareness was palpable. She scanned the room, noting the positions of security, the trajectory of objects, and the reactions of fans. Every tilt of her head, every small movement, was deliberate. She adjusted her posture, subtly shifting to avoid debris without appearing flustered. To the untrained eye, it looked like grace under pressure. To those analyzing the situation closely, it was strategy, a nuanced dance of visibility, defiance, and control. Security faced constant pressure from multiple fronts. Stadium protocol dictated that VIP guests be protected at all costs, yet any aggressive action risked public perception. Guards couldn't just remove fans indiscriminately. Each intervention had to be measured, documented, and justified. And in a stadium now under the scrutiny of global media, every action or inaction would be broadcast, analyzed, and debated in real time. As the game continued on the field, the chaos above became its own spectacle. Cameras zoomed on Meghan, capturing the precise moment a cup bounced harmlessly near her feet. Analysts commented on her poise, security movements, and the escalating frustration of the crowd. Social media exploded with GIFs and clips, looping the same moments over and over, each iteration amplifying the tension. Security wasn't just managing the physical environment. They were navigating a storm of optics, perception, and narrative control. Several incidents tested their limits. A fan in the upper deck leaned far over the railing, attempting to throw a program directly at her. Security personnel reacted instantly, pulling him back while maintaining a buffer around Meghan. Another fan, caught on camera raising a bottle, was intercepted mid-throw, creating a tense standoff that sent ripples through the crowd. Each intervention required split-second decisions, a blend of instinct, training, and anticipation. One miscalculation could escalate the situation dangerously, both physically and in the media narrative. The psychology of crowd behavior played a critical role. Fans saw each act of security intervention and interpreted it differently. Some were impressed, others incensed. The feedback loop was relentless. Security acted, fans reacted, cameras captured, social media amplified, and Meghan's composed presence influenced the next wave of reactions. The stadium had become a living organism, with security as both the spine and the nervous system, reacting to stimuli in real time, trying to maintain stability amid constant chaos. And the stakes were high. It wasn't just about the thrown objects or the shouts. It was about control, perception, and narrative. Every viral clip added pressure. Editors, commentators, and fans worldwide dissected each incident. Was the security too heavy-handed? Too lenient? Did Meghan's poise make the situation worse or elevate her image? Every decision inside the stadium became part of a global conversation, and security had to operate under this invisible, relentless pressure. As the innings progressed, security implemented layered strategies. Guards formed rotating patrols, scanning both the VIP section and the crowd, while supervisors coordinated with stadium officials to ensure quick responses to escalating threats. Objects continued to fly, but intervention was increasingly swift. Fans grew more cautious, some retreating slightly, others escalating their efforts, testing the limits of both security and Meghan's composure. Yet, despite the chaos, Meghan maintained her presence. She adjusted to the environment, leaning subtly, raising her hand to signal readiness, and observing without reacting in panic. Her composure became a tool,